Thank you, Nina Enrique. Good evening, everyone. I'm Alma Angeles for NET25 World News on tonight's headlines. A major development here from the Philippines. Former President Rodrigo Duterte has been arrested upon his return to Manila from Hong Kong. Duterte was taken into custody based on a warrant issued by the International Criminal Court, or ICC.
Now, the legal basis for my being here, as apparently I was brought here not of my own volition. It's somebody else's. Kung hindi ibang tao, ikaw siguro, because this is your structure.
Ito yung nakikita mong isang senaryo na pagmumulan lamang ng mas malaking pagdududa kung tayo po ay makakarating pa sa pagkakaisa.
And the news starts now. A major development here from the Philippines. Former President Rodrigo Duterte has been arrested upon his return to Manila from Hong Kong. Duterte was taken into custody based on a warrant issued by the International Criminal Court, or ICC, for alleged crimes against humanity.
What is the crime that I committed?
The Philippines firebrand former leader Rodrigo Duterte was arrested upon his arrival at Manila's main airport on Tuesday. That was at the request of the International Criminal Court and confirmed by the office of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. It's a major step in the court's investigation into thousands of alleged extrajudicial killings during Duterte's presidency-defining war on drugs.
Now, the legal basis for my being here.
Duterte questioned the reason for his arrest in an Instagram video posted by his daughter, Veronica, from his custody at a Manila airbase. Duterte's drug war was a campaign promise that swept the maverick crime-busting mayor to presidential power in 2016. Reuters captured graphic footage at the time of the violence. According to police, 6,200 suspects were killed during anti-drug operations, but activists say the real death toll of the crackdown was far greater. Police deny any involvement in those killings and reject allegations from rights groups of systematic executions and cover-ups. Duterte has repeatedly defended the crackdown and denied ordering the murder of drug suspects, saying he instructed police to kill only in self-defense. On Tuesday, some of his supporters rallied outside the airbase where he was held.
Ay hindi maaaring issue ng ICC sapagkat wala pa naman yatang ipinadalang complaint sa kanya na para sagutin ng Pangulo. Sa makatwid, kung walang warrant of arrest at sa ilalim lang ng red notice ng ICC o ng Interpol, medyo questionable, kaduda-duda yung paraan kung bakit ang dating Pangulo ng bansa ay kanilang takpin.
So you have to answer now for the deprivation of liberty. Naman doon, blooper, puro pagdating sa trial dyan, tatawagin kita sa witness stand. Sabihin ko, you're the person who arrested me. May I know the reason why? Have you read the documents? Or at least, have you read the case at that time when you made the arrest? So that you would be guided to what you should know. Yan lang yan. Kaibigan tayo, galing ako gobyerno.
Tsaka hindi niya po yun deserve.
Duterte is old and he did not deserve what they did to him. What he did was for the Philippines. The time that he was the president was peaceful. There was less crime and there was order when he was in power. He did not deserve this treatment.
Duterte's ally and former legal counsel, Salvador Pinello, said the arrest was unlawful and police had denied legal representation. Human Rights Watch called the arrest a critical step for accountability in the Philippines and said authorities should swiftly hand Duterte over to the ICC.
Ukraine has launched its largest drone attack yet on Moscow, targeting the Russian capital with at least 91 drones early Tuesday morning. Now the strikes killed one person, sparked fires, two people now sparked fires and forced airports to shut down, disrupting dozens of flights. Russian officials say a total of 337 Ukrainian drones were intercepted across multiple regions, including Moscow and Kursk.
There was a strong explosion, I think around 5 in the morning, or maybe a bit later. It was very loud. Everyone got up to see what happened. We heard that many more drones were flying to the center of Moscow, about 6 or 7 of them, getting further and further. After that, we saw that a window in our kitchen was broken.
I heard a loud roaring and then a bang. It was very loud. I did not see it from that side, but from this one. I can't tell where it all fell, but the bang was so strong that I jumped off my sofa.
The attack comes as Ukrainian forces push deeper into Russia's western Kursk region, aiming to create a buffer zone against missile strikes. Meanwhile, Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin called the drone offensive the most massive attack of enemy UAVs on the capital, adding that air defenses successfully repelled the threat. Despite the chaos, life in Moscow seemed calm, with commuters going about their day. However, airports in Moscow and nearby regions were temporarily closed to ensure air safety. The escalation coincides with upcoming talks between Ukrainian and U.S. officials in Saudi Arabia, aimed at exploring peace negotiations as both sides intensify their offensive. The war continues to heat up on multiple fronts. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio discussed regional and international developments in a meeting in Jeddah. In Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, high-stakes diplomacy is now underway as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio arrived ahead of crucial talks aimed at ending the 3-year war in Ukraine. On Monday, both leaders met separately with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to discuss regional and international developments. While details of these discussions remain under wraps, the focus is on finding common ground for peace. The talks come at a pivotal moment, with Ukraine proposing a ceasefire deal that includes halting Black Sea missile strikes and prisoner exchanges. Kiev is also expected to offer access to its rare earth minerals in exchange for resuming U.S. military aid, which has been paused amid tensions between Zelensky and President Trump. Observers say Saudi Arabia's role in hosting these negotiations highlights the growing diplomatic clout on the global stage. And this meeting marks the first direct dialogue between Ukrainian and U.S. officials since February, when Zelensky's visit to Washington ended in a public clash with Trump over Ukraine's approach to the war. And as the talks unfold, all eyes are on Jeddah to see if they can deliver meaningful steps toward peace or if the conflict will continue to escalate.
The only solution to this war is diplomacy and getting them to a table where that's possible. I think the French and the British have been very supportive along the way over the last week as well, and very helpful. So, we're hopeful we'll have good meetings tomorrow. I mean, the minerals deal's on the table. That's continuing to be worked on. It's not part of this conversation per se, and it's not something that tomorrow can be successful without it. It's certainly a deal the president wants to see done, but it doesn't necessarily have to happen tomorrow. There's still more details to work out. And at this point, we're probably, rather than a memorandum of understanding, just wanting to sign a specific agreement, and that would take a little bit more time. But I wouldn't prejudge tomorrow by whether or not we have a minerals deal. It's an important topic, but it's not the main topic on the agenda.
President Trump's tariffs have spooked investors with fears of an economic downturn, driving a stock market sell-off. Now that has wiped out $4 trillion from the S&P 500's peak last month, when Wall Street was cheering much of Trump's agenda. A barrage of new Trump policies has increased uncertainty for businesses, consumers, and investors. Notably, back-and-forth tariff moves against major trading partners like Canada, Mexico, and China. Thomas I. Likeness for more.
The stock market doesn't like chaos and uncertainty. And there's been plenty of that in the last month or so with Trump's tariff announcements, delays in putting them in, changes as to what goods may be exempted, and a general attitude of wanting to disrupt global trade. Economists fear the U.S. may be on the brink of a recession, and that fear has spread to households which aren't seeing the drop in grocery prices and other goods that Trump promised last fall during the election campaign. To make matters worse, thousands of federal government employees have been sacked and are jobless, and lawmakers are struggling to pass a spending bill to avert a government shutdown. On Wall Street, Mike Musio, the president of FBB Capital, says there's no doubt investors are nervous.
Markets continue to sell off in the wake of additional and continued uncertainty around what the Trump tariff situation is going to look like. We have a lot of different numbers and a lot of different trading partners that keep coming up in the news, and we're kind of waiting to see where things land today, the next hour, the next week. And market participants hate uncertainty, and there's a lot of uncertainty around this right now.
Musio says the market is also reacting to fears of a slowdown in economic growth and shaky consumer confidence. Trump on Sunday declined to predict whether the U.S. is headed into recession, nor would he comment on the market's reaction to his erratic policy shifts. But he did warn in his speech to Congress last week that there could be some short-term economic pain as tariffs are implemented. Musio says it seems like Trump is willing to accept a U.S. recession.
That seems to be the end game, and if, some inflationary pressures near term, potential short and shallow recession, that these are things that they're willing to accept for that longer term, more stable, more self-reliant, stronger position for the U.S.
A Reuters News survey of 74 economists in the U.S., Canada, and Mexico shows 70 of them say the risk of a recession has increased. Meanwhile, it doesn't seem like Trump is interested in a trade deal with anyone. EU Trade Commissioner Maros Sefcovic says his efforts to come up with a mutually beneficial agreement have largely been ignored.
I traveled to U.S. last month. I was seeking constructive dialogue to avoid the unnecessary pain of measures and countermeasures. We jointly identified a few areas that would allow us to move forward by fostering mutual benefits. But in the end, as it said, one hand cannot clap. The U.S. administration does not seem to be engaging to make a deal.
The next tariffs to take effect will be on Wednesday, when Trump will put a 25% surcharge on aluminum and steel imports. And on April 2nd, he plans to unveil a global regime of reciprocal tariffs on all trading partners. While they wait for those measures to take effect, it's likely investors will continue to cash out, further pushing down the stock market. Thomas I. Likeness, NET25 World News.
A container ship collided with a tanker carrying jet fuel for the U.S. military off the northeast coast of England. Now, the collision sparked fires and multiple explosions on both vessels, forcing both crews to abandon ship. The tanker, which can carry tens of thousands of tons of jet fuel, had been at anchor when the smaller container ship struck it. Now, the collision ruptured its cargo tank, releasing fuel into the sea. Angel Membrere has more.
Britain's Coast Guard says 36 crew members made it safely to shore and one ended up in hospital. The Coast Guard says one crew member of the Portuguese-flagged cargo ship, Solong, remains missing and the search has ended. The Solong carried 15 containers of sodium cyanide, a toxic chemical used mainly in gold mining, and an unknown quantity of alcohol. Emergency teams sent a helicopter, fixed-wing aircraft, lifeboats, and nearby vessels with firefighting capability to the incident Monday morning. Oceanographer Dr. Simon Boxall blames the accident on incompetence.
It is unusual that this accident happened because the sterner vessel full of aviation fuel was at anchor, and the Portuguese vessel, the Solong, basically powered into her. Now, there were reports of fog earlier, but modern ships have anti-collision systems, they have radar and so on. The sterner ship could have done very little about it. It couldn't have moved away because it was at anchor. I wouldn't have had time to respond by the time it got its engines warmed up and everything else. But the Solong should have avoided it, and it would be down to incompetence on behalf of Solong. There is no reason why, in the 21st century, two ships should collide.
A Greenpeace spokesperson says any environmental impact depends on factors including the amount and type of fuel spilled, plus the weather conditions.
The crude oil spill is fairly thick and gooey. We're very good at dealing with crude oil spills. The problem with this sort of spill is that it will evaporate, which is probably good news for the ocean, not such good news for the atmosphere, but also it makes it more dangerous in terms of likely explosions. So, it has to be dealt with very carefully. And at the moment, the winds are carrying it towards the coast. I think it's highly unlikely it's going to explode when it hits the coast, but it will cause pollution incidents along the coast.
The Coast Guard says British government officials are working with salvage and insurance companies, adding that both vessels remained on fire, with aircraft monitoring the situation. Angel Membreri for NET25 World News.
A U.S. judge has temporarily halted the deportation of Mahmoud Khalil, a Palestinian activist and former Columbian University student whose arrest by immigration authorities over the weekend has sparked protests and legal challenges. Now, Khalil's detention comes amid a Trump administration crackdown on student activists accused of supporting Hamas. Take a look.
As of now, there are no assurances.
A U.S. judge on Monday ordered that Palestinian student Mahmoud Khalil not be deported, for now. Khalil had been a prominent figure in Columbia University's pro-Palestinian student protest movement last year. Just hours after telling Reuters that he was concerned the government was targeting him, Khalil was arrested Saturday night by U.S. Department of Homeland Security agents in front of his wife, a U.S. citizen who is 8 months pregnant, according to one of his lawyers. His arrest comes amid a crackdown on some of the student protesters by U.S. President Donald Trump, who branded Khalil a, quote, radical foreign pro-Hamas student on social media and said more arrests would follow. After his arrest, Khalil was moved to a federal jail for migrants in Louisiana to await deportation proceedings, according to his lawyers and a U.S. detainee database. New York Southern District Court Judge Jesse Furman has ordered a hearing in the case for Wednesday. Khalil's lawyers also urged Furman to order their client's return to New York. They accused the government of seeking to deprive Khalil of access to legal counsel by sending him far from the state. On Monday, demonstrators on the streets of New York City denounced his arrest as an attack on protected speech.
Release Mahmoud Khalil now!
According to a Reuters witness, police and hundreds of protesters briefly clashed in Lower Manhattan, and at least one person was detained.
We're here because a permanent resident living here in our city was kidnapped by ICE, part of the DHS, and they're trying to deport him because he's exercising his freedom of speech and his right to speak out, which is protected for everyone here, be they a citizen or not.
Khalil had held legal permanent resident status, often called a green card. His wife said the DHS agents that arrested him claimed his green card was revoked. However, it would entitle him to legal protections that may have been violated in his arrest, says immigration attorney Cyrus Mehta.
Highly unusual because Mr. Khalil is a green card holder. Green card holders have rights. They just cannot be picked up in the way he has been and detained incognito. The person should have been convicted of a crime, a deportable offense. I don't believe Mr. Khalil has been convicted of such an offense, from what I know. You could also initiate deportation proceedings if a green card holder has provided material support to a terrorist organization, which is what the Trump administration has been alleging. But an executive order cannot change the law. We do have a statute And it bears repeating where the government has a heavy burden to establish through clear and convincing evidence that the green card holder is deportable under one of the grounds of deportation in the Immigration and Nationality Act. Let's assume that he has been solely involved in campus protests for Palestinian rights. That in itself should not constitute material support to terrorism.
However, Trump wrote that his presence in the U.S. was, quote, contrary to national and foreign policy interests.
Now today, Japan commemorates the 14th anniversary of the devastating 2011 Great East Japan earthquake and tsunami.
巨大地震と大津波、そして東京電力福島第一原子力発電所の事故は、多くの県民の皆様から日々の暮らしを奪いました。最愛のご家族やご親族、ご友人を失われた方々のお気持ちを思うと、哀惜の念に耐えません。ここに改めて衷心より哀悼の誠を捧げ。
The disaster, one of the most catastrophic in modern history, claimed thousands of lives, displaced communities, and left a lasting impact on the nation. On March 11, 2011, at 2:46 p.m. local time, a magnitude 9.0 earthquake struck off Japan's northeastern coast near the Tohoku region. It triggered the massive tsunami with waves as high as 30 meters, devastating coastal towns and villages. The disaster claimed over 18,000 lives, with thousands still missing to this day. Entire communities were swept away, and the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant suffered catastrophic failures, forcing mass evacuations. 14 years later, Japan continues to reflect on the lessons learned from that tragic day. Memorial ceremonies were held across the country to honor those who lost their lives. The disaster left an indelible mark on Japan's infrastructure and environmental policies. Recovery efforts have made significant progress, but challenges remain. Experts are warning that coastal areas are still vulnerable to future tsunamis despite improved seawalls and early warning systems. Environmental concerns also persist. The Fukushima nuclear meltdown led to radioactive contamination in surrounding areas, with ongoing cleanup efforts expected to last decades. Thousands of people have been rescued from scam centers along the Thai-Myanmar border in recent weeks, marking a significant crackdown on human trafficking and cybercrime operations in the region. From our ASEAN Bureau in Thailand, Crystal Mapa reports.
Reporting from Thailand, I am covering a developing story about thousands of people rescued from scam centers along the Thai-Myanmar border. Over 7,000 individuals from more than 24 countries have been freed in recent weeks, but many remain stranded, awaiting repatriation. Thailand is working closely with international authorities to expedite the return of these individuals. However, the process is complex, especially for countries without an embassy in Thailand. Thai Foreign Ministry spokesperson Nikorndej Balankura emphasized the importance of cooperation.
We urge the receiving governments to find support that on their own, while Thailand will also seek support from international organizations. I used the example of the IOM, International Organization for Migration, who is also ready to assist Thailand. That's the latest I heard, but we haven't talked about the modalities as to which, who's going to, how the contribution will be divided into. But please rest assured that we'll find a way to help them to the best of our ability, given that we have quite limited ability now. A lot of people is crossing over to Thailand.
The situation is pressing, with many of those rescued in need of urgent medical care. Balankura highlighted the priority on medical support.
The ministry attaches very high importance on that, and we are aware that there are sick people and they need to be repatriated onto the Thai side as early as possible, and we are working on that to provide medical facilities for them.
Countries like China and India have already begun repatriating their citizens, with hundreds returning home each week. Thailand aims to repatriate 1,500 people weekly, but logistical challenges persist, including verifying identities and securing funding for the operation. This is Crystal Mapa for NET25 World News. Back to you, Alma.
And the news continues here on NET25. We'll be right back. For most of the U.S., spring daylight savings time means advancing clocks an hour ahead. The loss of that 1 hour, however, couldn't keep the Los Angeles Clippers from winning in a down-to-the-wire overtime showdown with the Sacramento Kings. The Los Angeles Clippers pulled off a dramatic 111-110 overtime victory against the Sacramento Kings, thanks to Kawhi Leonard's buzzer-beating shot. The thrilling game kept the Clippers in 8th place in the Western Conference playoff race and left fans on the edge of their seats. In Inglewood, California, Eva and Alan for the details.
Clippers win 111-110 over the Kings.
And staying to the very end for this game was a must because this contest ended in overtime. Despite Zubac's seemingly score-at-will persona in the paint, the Clippers limped out of the first quarter down 20-23 due to some sloppy passing and lack of penetration scoring. In the second, the Clippers' interior and fast break attacks improved, but so did the Kings' three-point shooting. Still, LA was able to go into the half up 51-49. The third and fourth quarters saw more lead changes, and with 22 seconds left in regulation, the Clips burned their final timeout down 95-97. But it was the beard, James Harden, whose left-handed floater forced the game into overtime. Bodies hit the floor in OT as both teams forced one desperation play after another. In the final seconds, LA was down 109-110, but assistant coach Brian Shaw gave Kawhi Leonard the closeout assignment, and Leonard delivered with a 2-point double bounce buzzer beater that had everyone talking.
It was a crazy shot by Kawhi, but you know how Kawhi is. He makes big shots. You know, that's just how he is, and he showed it today.
It bounced and it looked like it was going to bounce out, and we went down where we were dying, and then all of a sudden it bounced in and we jumped up and we were excited.
He was just holding the ball patiently and got to his spot. I wouldn't have expected a left hand, whatever you want to call that, but but he got it done and I'm happy it went in.
Coach, how good was it knowing that the only thing you lost today was 1 hour due to daylight savings time?
I'm glad that that's the only thing we lost was the hour. You know, like I said, Sacramento, since their coaching change, and the trade bringing Levine in there, seems like they've been recharged and rejuvenated. We knew it was going to be a tough game, and we wanted to leave out of here tomorrow, with a win in hand, going on the road and see what we can do out there.
It was a tough day with that extra hour, but a wonderful victory with Kawhi doing it. It was absolutely worth it.
So whether you're a fan or a member of the coaching staff, giving up an extra hour isn't a big sacrifice.
Especially when your team wins. Reporting from the Intuit Dome in Inglewood, California, Eva and Allen for NET25 World News.
And with that, again, tonight's broadcast for everyone here on NET25. I'm Alma Angeles. Thank you all for joining us. Good night.